This is the Court Leader's Advantage, a podcast series for court professionals and by court professionals. Brought to you by thecourtleader.net and in cooperation with NACM, the National Association for Court Management. Many contend that tensions between larger urban general jurisdiction courts and smaller limited jurisdiction courts often stem from disparities in resources, staffing, and technology. Urban courts, with their towering caseloads, high-stakes criminal prosecutions, sprawling civil disputes, and complex civil litigation, tend to attract greater funding, the best technology, and top-tier legal talent. In contrast, smaller suburban and rural courts quietly manage everyday justice with limited staff and sometimes outdated systems. They can find themselves on the margins of statewide judicial planning. Operational differences add another layer of complexity. Urban courts are often the first to adopt new tools such as AI-assisted litigant self-help, virtual hearings, and real-time language translation. Smaller courts often watch from a distance, struggling with connectivity issues and budget constraints. So is this gap technological or is it cultural? What works in a bustling city courthouse may falter in a courthouse where everyone knows each other's names. I'm Pete Kiefer, and welcome to the Court Leader's Advantage podcast series. This month, we're exploring the tensions between larger urban general jurisdiction courts and smaller limited jurisdiction courts. Are there strategies that can help unify and strengthen our overall justice system? Our moderator today is Christy Collier, Court Administrator for the Maricopa County Justice Courts in Phoenix, Arizona. On our panel are Melinda Brooks, Specialized Docket Manager for the Franklin County Municipal Court in Columbus, Ohio. Timothy Edsel, Chief Operations Officer for the Fulton County Clerk of Superior and Magistrate Courts in Atlanta, Georgia. And Courtney Jackson, Court Administrator for the Municipal Court in Decatur, Georgia. Thank you all for joining today's podcast. So let's join Christy and the panel for a discussion on urban and rural court tensions.
Lack of funding, staffing, and infrastructure often holds some limited jurisdiction suburban and rural courts back. For example, innovations like remote hearings, electronic document management, and using AI to provide access to legal information are just some of the court's reach. How do technology gaps affect access to justice for litigants in your court? Melinda?
Christy, I would say in the modern age, so many functions, whether it's a grocery store or any type of shopping, everything almost requires a cell phone to be able to function. And thankfully within our court, we've been able to have a service offered through our drop-in center where we can connect people with cell phones at no cost. And it also assists our probation officers and specialized dockets coordinators in engaging in video contacts with those folks so that we can maybe save them the trip downtown. But if they don't have access to that, or if they don't know that that's accessible, then that could certainly be a barrier.
Yes, Courtney.
Technology gaps that we face here in Decatur would be remote hearings, payment portal functions, or digital notifications. May not be fully available or accessible to litigants in my court, which can create a barrier for those individuals who may already be navigating some complex legal challenges. A common issue that we may see here that can result to that is unreliable internet options, or maybe not have the technical skills to engage with online systems. These gaps can result in missed court dates. That is one of the major common things that I see in my court. Closing technology gaps is not just about modernization, but it's about ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their income or their location, have access to justice in a timely manner, efficient and equitable manner. Courts in rural or under-resourced communities often face significant barriers due to limited resources and may even fall further behind, which may create a backlog with limiting fundings for technology upgrades or creating an uneven playing field across jurisdictions.
Have differences in funding levels impacted your court? For example, are there challenges regarding hiring qualified staff or maintaining facilities or implementing new programs? Tim?
Well, in Fulton County, we have seen some budgetary increases over the years. However, those budgetary increases have always been centered around our mandated services. So services that we are statutorily required to provide to our court users has been the only things, or contractually required to fulfill, have been the only increases that we've seen over the past few years. So that leaves little to no funding for like discretionary improvements to our facilities or new programming. So we're constantly forced to find ways to reassess how we do business. And so that means looking at our workflows and how we can streamline processes, or if there comes up opportunities where those processes, after they've been streamlined, have identified other roles that could be repurposed to other areas, or to help, really maximize our capacity because of our rising demand of service needs from our court users, has been key for us. I will tell you, I know specifically in Fulton County, and some of the things I've seen across the state of Georgia, is that we're all facing this unique opportunity to try to address these hiring challenges, because our salaries are not as competitive as private sector. And then one of the things we've had to focus on is how can we leverage social media and really tell our story and our mission to get people who are really looking to be in a public service job, how they can actually make an impact. And so while we can't offer you the most competitive salaries, how can we show you that you can have impact on people's lives in our community and really make a difference? And the only other thing I would add is, I know in my previous role, I served as the juvenile court administrator for Fulton County, and we had some of those similar challenges. We had youth and families that needed wraparound services that was not funded through our court's budget. So we had to look for community partners and grants and different opportunities to try to fulfill some of those needs that we know those families and youth needed, but the court just didn't have the funding to provide.
Courtney?
Like Tim stated, we've seen some of those things as well, but budget constraints can often delay necessary repairs and upgrades to our court facilities. Such delays can directly impact both the safety and accessibility for the buildings, not just for the professional environment that we strive to maintain for all who enter our doors, staff, litigants, the public alike. But we do see those when budgets are not allowed to, or cannot fully allocate those funds for those necessary needs. As far as implementing new programs, we here in Decatur have remained committed to exploring innovative solutions to operate effectively and efficiently as possible. The reality is equitable and consistent funding is essential for courts to fully meet their missions and serve the public effectively. Without adequate financial support, courts are limited in their ability to fulfill their mission, monitorize operations, and provide the level of service to the public that they deserve. Sustainable investments in our core infrastructures is not a luxury, but it is more so a necessity for ensuring justice, public trust, and institutional integrity.
What strategies or partnerships have proven effective in helping your court close the gaps in funding, technology, or staffing? Melinda?
Grants have been mentioned already. That's a big part of how we support new projects. Of course, they usually have to be, brand new initiatives so that they, don't supplant funds. So grant funding, also collaborating with our, justice partners. We're lucky enough to be in the same complex with several other court entities. So there are times when we will share ideas or share funding, or maybe get a sub award from our county partners to do our smaller projects. We might share staff between departments within the court. it's not what you want to do. You don't want to pile more work on someone who's already doing a good job and a solo job, but there are times when you can reimagine a court position. Maybe if there's a vacancy, that's an opportunity to take a fresh look at operations and determine if there are ways to use that position differently to cover some needs that have occurred since that position was written. And then we haven't done this ourselves yet, but there have been courts I'm aware of who have used AmeriCorps as it's kind of a grant funded thing, but like they've been great for like navigator services, those types of roles. And then we've even used AARP part-time workers where they will contract with the court to have part-time workers who are retired, who can fulfill some of the part-time jobs that we've needed to do in the past. So we've had some success with those.
Tim?
Well, similar to what Melinda said, is that our first focus has always been heavily on grants, both state and federal, to help fill some of those gaps, and actually partnering with some of our justice partners to apply for some of those grants. But some of the other things that we've done is that we've used, like for our court reporters, for example, we use pool interpreter services and court reporter services. So where you're trying to face that demand to fulfill those needs, that it can be shared amongst the different courts. And then also it gives you some leverage too when you're trying to leverage contract negotiations and being able to get better pricing for larger areas as well. But I think it also starts with when you really are trying to push a partnership or have a strategy for closing some of those funding gaps, whether it's with your commissioners or your city council, really building those relationships and being able to show and tell your court story. So what impact are you having? What benefit does your court offer? And are you constantly in some type of communication, whether that's with just regular check-ins or providing, your annual updates? How are you really telling your court story, and how can you leverage and say, this program will offer this benefit, and if given the opportunity to do a pilot of shorts, we can show how we can scale that and ultimately maybe save the county money or ultimately provide a better service to the constituents of or court users of your court. So those have been our best ways to find a way to actually build those partnerships and leverage those resources internally as a county and not just have us in individual silos.
What role do state court administrative offices, the state legislators, the county and municipal funding bodies play in either perpetuating or addressing resource disparities across jurisdictions? Melinda?
I think our best example would be our state funding that we receive for a good portion of our probation pretrial department. It is every 2 years we have a Bureau of Community Sanctions grant that we apply for. And I know when they are preparing the state budget and determining the needs for all of the community sanctions entities around the state, I believe they take these types of processes in consideration to determine that the best way they can serve the entities that they work with and fund. There's accountability measures, there's applications, it's not a given, but I know that when they get the opportunity, they take a look at that. And ultimately, to go back with what Tim was saying, the most important thing is to tell your story and prove your worth to all of these entities. So you need to be able to have dependable data and be able to show that while, the work that we do are feel-good stories and they're right down to, individual human beings that we're trying to serve in our community that we're trying to serve, it also has to go through the data to show that the dollars that are going towards your court are well spent and have a large impact and are well managed and observed so that they can be proven to be an accountable way to use public dollars.
Yes. Courtney?
I'm going to speak from a municipal funding body because my operations totally depend on the city's budget. So which they play a critical role in addressing disparities by allocating, resources that prioritize courthouse improvements, staff support, program funding that aligns with the specific needs of the community. We have a strategic plan that pretty much powerhouse drives all of our initiatives within the city. So to truly move the needle, going along with Tim and Melinda, a more collaborative, data-informed approach among all stakeholders, whether that's municipal leaders, court administrators, state agencies, grounding this collaboration with equity ensures that investments are not only responsive, but also sustainable and inclusive. Such approach would go a long way towards leveling the playing field for all courts of all sizes and jurisdictions, helping to ensure that consistent and reliable access to justice across the states.
Do funding inequities affect public trust and confidence in the judicial system, Tim?
I think absolutely, but I've learned that it takes more than just um, funding inequities to build public trust. It takes courts being consistent, transparent, and really engaging your court users as they come into your court, because that first interaction, those first phone calls, is really how the public views the court system and how they actually navigate through the process. And so some of the things that we've done is we've partnered all of our justice partners have come together to do things like simply, having forums and having a public access center, having what we call our Justice Resource Center. So we have volunteer attorneys from our Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation that are actually there to help litigants file their dispossessory answers, because that impacts how they actually are scheduled for court, or if they get a chance to have their side of the case heard. Or we have some senior volunteer attorneys who are actually on site to help court users go through whether they're going through trying to get a TPO or file a garnishment case. So being able to partner with some of those volunteer attorneys and really engage the public to show that while funding inequities are present, there's other ways to still build trust. And that's by being transparent up front, being consistent, and really focusing on doing the basic interactions well, and having being able to provide as much guidance as you can without giving legal advice, which is all I'm always stressing to my team, and being accessible. Because if we are accessible and we are just human and understand that the people who have come through our courts are experiencing some form of trauma, and how we can actually help better serve them and have some compassion for them while guiding them or helping them navigate through their process, I think builds public trust far more than just some of the funding. Now, to be clear, funding inequities lead to backlogs and different things, and how quickly cases move. But the court can do its part by actually saying up front, here's what your process is, or here's how we can help you, point to resources to help you navigate through your process.
Courtney?
All that Tim has said, but yeah, I do believe funding inequity absolutely affect public trust and confidence in our judicial system, often in profound and unfortunately lasting ways. When court lack the resources to provide timely, consistent, and high quality services, the public may begin to perceive, and in some cases experience, the system as fragmented, unfair, or inaccessible, especially in our under-resourced communities. In contrast, I would say well-funded courts are better positioned to implement modern technology, maintain safe and welcoming facilities, as I spoke before, that underfunded or there's a lack of resources, it may not have those safety parameters in our courtrooms or courthouses, and have adequate training for those staff or those well-funded communities. All this help promote transparency, as Tim stated before, fairness, and dignity in the judicial process, which is essentially to maintain public trust and confidence in the rule of law.
What advice do you have for courts that are struggling with their relationship with a larger urban general district trial court? Melinda?
I think this can kind of be broken down into two buckets. There's a structural approach where you can work on sharing, whether you're sharing projects or exchanging information about grant funding, or working with common funding entities if that exists. taking turns on grant funding opportunities that are like a every few years type of offering, so that we're not competing with each other on federal grant level applications. And then there's kind of the other bucket would be more of an interpersonal approach, I would say. Being very active on your criminal justice planning board, if that is something that is in the jurisdiction, to build that rapport and again, partner on overlapping projects, build those relationships, shared associations, get out there and to just personalize your work so that the value can be seen on both sides of that coin.
Tim?
Well, for me, I think exactly what Melinda said. It starts with building those relationships first, making those connections, introducing, and actually picking up the phone. Because sometimes when you're actually trying to get processes done, things can be lost in translation when you're trying to send emails. So that personal touch really goes a long way with moving things forward. I know even from my experience in juvenile court, being able to just first start off with, after you've already made those introductions, say, hey, this is clearly what I need. This is why I need it. And can you help me get through this? Builds those relationships for whether you're in a larger urban court or the rural court. So you build that camaraderie that's needed to move the justice system along. And then sometimes I believe just if you take the time to find that common ground, that we're all here to serve the public and we're all here to do a great job, and then you can really build that quickly. And I've seen that move things a lot faster along through collaboration than just sending an email or, trying to rely on what the process or the law says. This is like how helping people understand the impact and helping people understand that we're ultimately all partners in trying to make this experience come to life for our courts.
Courtney?
Having those one-on-one meetings. I think that is very, very important, as Melinda and Tim has said, building those relationships, figuring out who and what and how, answering those questions. I know for me, when I first stepped into this role with the city of Decatur, I took a tour. I made a purpose of making those connections. So when there's changes, I can pick up the phone, not send an email, because of course, you may not know who to email, but when you network and meet with people in those conferences or at lunch or whatever the case may be, if you were in that area like I am in the city of Decatur, my state court is right down the street. And I can go there and, be present with them and have that rapport with them. I think that is mainly important, building those relationships, networking whenever you can, conferences through emails, by phone, even if it's just connecting with judges or whoever, finding out who is in your jurisdiction and making a point to have those relationships with those individuals.
A heartfelt thank you to Christy, Melinda, Tim, and Courtney for sharing their thoughtful perspectives on the ongoing tension between large urban courts and smaller limited jurisdiction courts. This is a complex and evolving conversation, and one that continues to challenge us all to seek thoughtful and practical solutions. And to you dedicated court professionals tuning in today, your unwavering commitment to presenting a unified and credible face of justice strengthens the very foundation of our court system. Thank you for all you do. Join us again on Tuesday, September 16th, for another episode as we explore the pressing issues facing our courts. This has been the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series. I'm Pete Kiefer, and thanks for being with us today. Thanks for joining us today. The Court Leaders Advantage is a regular podcast series on courts and court administration. Today's episode will be available on our website, on the Court Leader website, on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. Become part of the conversation. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, email us. Our address is clapodcast@nacomnet.org. Did you hear an interesting comment by one of the panelists that you would like to listen to again, but you don't want to search the entire episode to find it? The additional resources section on the webpage has a question time marker sheet. Find the discussion question on the sheet, and next to it is the time that question was asked. You can quickly fast forward to that time and listen to the panelists' comments. Remember, if you don't have time to watch an episode, you can always listen to the audio version. Listen in your car or on the bus on your way to or from work. You never have to miss an episode. I'm Pete Kiefer, and on behalf of our guests, the Court Leader website, and the National Association for Court Management, thank you, and have a great day. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the host and the individual presenters. They do not necessarily represent the position of the National Association for Court Management.